But Taliwa Dam has been in the pipeline for many years.
Yes.
And it became controversial only when of course, Justice Carpio, who happens to be highly respected, raised the issue of a loan from China, which will be used to fund this project. So why did we pick China? And then some sectors raised the issue of Japan offering another proposal with smaller interest rate. It's a different type of project. Of course, it's a WIR, whatever it is. You may have to explain that to us. But people want to know why we are depending on China for this project.
Well, first, we're not only depending on China in terms of the overall loan portfolio. China committed around $9 billion US dollars in terms of ODA financing. Japan also committed around $9 billion US dollars, and Korea committed $1 billion US dollars.
Meaning they are participating in the project?
Not this particular project, but other projects. For instance, the Metro Manila Subway, the ODA for that is from Japan.
Yes.
And there are some Korean projects that are already underway.
And precisely they're comparing the interest rates of Japan and China.
And there's a source of confusion there because they're comparing the nominal interest rates, which means is it on paper, no? But forgetting that also on that same paper is the currency. And so they're comparing apples and oranges. Now, if we go back to the metaphor earlier. The US denominated loans from China are at 2% with a 20-year repayment period, 7-year grace period. The Japanese loans are in Japanese yen, 0.1%. If we convert them, they're actually comparable. And we have posted that on the website. They're close to 2%. In fact, the Chinese ODA, as of signing, was at 2% in US dollars. The Japanese ODA, as of signing, was at 2.7% in US dollars. So if you convert the loan denomination into the same currency.
This is the total loan package.
For the recent loans that we've signed. Even though on paper it's 0.1% in Japanese yen, if we convert that into US dollars, it's in fact close to 2%. In fact, in this case, a little higher. Korea is in Korean won. So again, we have to convert that to US dollars in order to be able to make a direct comparison.
So kung in US dollars, ano yung sa Korea?
Sa Korea, 1.36% for the new Cebu International Container Port project. Yeah, so they're all sort of in the 1.3 to 2.7 range. No? Nothing is 30 times the other, which is what some people claim.
Sir, we left off with the issue of the interest rates, which is interesting to a lot of people, although a bit confusing.
It is. It is very confusing.
Just for reference, the Kaliwa and Chico projects are with an interest rate, nominal interest rate of 2%.
In US dollars.
In US dollars. Japan is at 0.08% in Japanese yen.
Over 40 years,
Over 40 years, yes, sir. Siguro, doon na natin tapusin muna para hindi nakakalito. I think a lot of people have the impression, and correct me if I'm wrong, that your percentage would not change in a loan even if you convert it to a different currency. For example, bear with me here. For example, if I borrow 200 pesos from somebody at a 50% interest rate, that's 100 pesos interest. So that's like $2 interest, which is still the same percentage, 50%.
There are a number of considerations, but maybe one of the more one of the less complicated ones is these are multi-year loans.
Yes, sir.
So 20, 40 years, and the expectation of the Forex markets in terms of what the exchange rates are going to be over 40 years, over 20 years, that is a complex matter that a lot of services have proprietary computations for. No? They make a lot of money from these Bloomberg terminals and the like. No? So, but anyone who has access to a Bloomberg terminal can run these numbers and see and confirm that in fact, if you convert these into the same currency and if you convert the terms into the same repayment period with the same grace period, with the same number of payments that you have to make over a period of time, these are the numbers that will come out. No? And we actually had a few financial experts do it by hand. And they only came, they were only 10 basis points away from each other in terms of the results. So this is a very complex part of financial projections. But actually, if you talk to people who work in foreign exchange and work in this part of the finance world, they will confirm that these indeed are not apples-to-apples comparisons.
I will not pretend to be into finances. What you're saying basically is that based on projections
over the life of the loan.
Over 20 years, for example, in the case of the
Yes.
Chinese, and 40 years in the case of the Japanese, lumalabas na 2.7% in dollars yung
Sa Japan,
Japanese
if
loan.
you make it also 20 years.
Okay.
Kailangan comparable. Yung currency, kailangan pareho rin yung repayment period, kailangan pareho rin yung grace period, pareho rin yung number of payments. At, you know, you hold all of those things constant and then you convert. And then you look at the projections of the forex markets in terms of where the exchange rate will be over 40 years. Again, it's quite a complex set of computations to do that. But we have checked and we have rechecked and we have checked again. No? And these are the numbers that
But
have
doesn't
come out.
it make for easier payment nga? Kaya nga ganun kaliit yung lalabas na interest rate, di ba? If it's over 40 years, I mean, it's a concession to us. It's easier for us to repay.
Yes,
Di
but
ba
we're
mas
paying for a
madali yan?
longer period of time
Hindi,
also.
kaya nga, mas madali din. Mas madali din siya.
Mas madali, although we are carrying that loan for a longer time. Hindi pa tayo bayad after 20 years instead of...
Pero yun yung capacity natin to
Correct.
pay within that period. At least
Yes.
not, I mean, kung ako, kung limited ang resources ko, kaya nga nauso yung mga zero interest na ang mga ganyan-ganyan, to allow you to choose certain types of payment schemes na yung kaya mo.
Kaya
Kung yun
nga-
lang ang kaya natin, dahil ito lang ang level ng development natin, di ba mas madali kung over 40 years, kahit gano'n ang kalalabasan?
Yung alam natin ay kaya natin pareho. And these are actually lower rates than if we borrowed from the international development banks. Kunyari, kung sa World Bank tayo humiram or sa ADB, they use the London Interbank rate. No? So yan ay nasa 2.4, 2.5% last I checked, plus dagdagan mo pa ng mga siguro 0.6 dahil dinadagdagan po nila yung LIBOR. No? So it's LIBOR plus, which means aabot yan ng mga 3 or above %. Ang meron po tayo dito ay yung pinaka-concessional rates from our bilateral partners. Mas mababa kaysa sa humiram sa multilateral development banks and certainly cheaper than borrowing from the private capital markets. Kasi kung mag-issue tayo ng bond, ay mas mataas pa kaysa sa 3.5%, no, or thereabouts. Kaya ito na po yung actually in terms of the options that are available, ito na yung pinaka-mababa.
Okay.
The Korean,
cost of financing.
the Korean project, the new Cebu International Container Port, the nominal interest rate is a bit higher. It's at 0.15% compared to Japan's 0.08.
But this is in Korean won.
In Korean won.
Yes.
But the equivalent fixed US dollar rate is lower
quite low.
at 1.36%.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
because of the currency itself. It's kasi pareho silang 40 years
Yes.
na maturity.
And also, it's important to note that the Korean government very generously offered us around 1 billion in concessional financing. But the Japanese government offered us up to 9 billion in concessional financing. So for instance, sa subway pa lang, yung 1 billion halos matatamaan na natin. But Japan offered us a higher ceiling for concessional
So
financing.
in other words, you can't, I mean, eventually you have a table that shows, look, ito yung nominal interest rate. Pagka pinasukan mo na exchange rate, magbabalance out yan. Now we can compare apples to apples. Once you're at apples to apples, it's also not that simple to just say na, apples to apples na, di piliin na lang natin every single time yung pinakang mababa.
Korea.
Kasi may threshold nga.
Kasi
Hindi
meron
naman, hindi naman nila papautang ang lahat.
So
sa
kung
atin,
baga
no?
doon sa credit card analogy natin, may
May
credit, limit ka pa rin.
Opo.
Okay.
So, mas malaki yung credit limit ng China. Ganun ba yun?
Pareho sa Japan.
Pareho sa Japan.
At
So,
nine.
what's the decisive factor
Gagamitin mo pareho yun.
na China? Bakit naging China?
Well, in terms of, I don't know, Bayani, you might have more perspective on this, but my understanding is when it comes to water projects, actually China has been a traditional partner. In fact, in terms of the Angat Dam under the Arroyo administration, we signed a loan agreement with China.